Hey everybody, welcome to this week's Q&As. I just want to let everybody know that a few different people have told me that because I disable comments on the YouTube videos, it's killing the algorithm, and that's why a lot of my other videos aren't getting picked up. So I might have to turn on the comments on all of the weekly Q&As, but I just want to remind everybody that please, if you have any question, ask it in the support services, because it's not that I don't want to answer other people's questions, it's that this weekly Q&A is specifically a thank you to all of you. If you're not a subscriber, I try my best to respond on social media, mostly Twitter I'm on, but I do try my best to respond in other comments on other videos on Twitter. I just can't answer everybody's question all day long, or I could work 24 hours a day and never get anything else done. So I mean that all respectfully, but I think a lot of people over the years have kind of interpreted as, oh, so you make people pay you to answer your questions? Anybody that follows me on Twitter knows actions speak louder than words, right? So go look at Twitter. But so yeah, just another quick reminder, any question you have, always make sure to ask it in the support services in order for it to be on this video or these videos. And if the comments do come on YouTube, I'm just going to try to, I think I could mute comments for certain videos so they don't pop up or something, just because respectfully, and once again, these videos are a specific thank you to all of you. And if I could help anybody else when I have extra time, I'll absolutely do so. And I genuinely enjoy doing so anyway. It's just only a matter of how much time in the day there is. So anyway, let's jump right in. First up, over on Floatplane, both Bash Ninja and CodeMonkey Mike seem to think that the video looks better on Floatplane than on YouTube and want to know if that's a placebo. No, you both nailed it. It's the compression algorithms that Linus Tech Tips uses on Floatplane versus what YouTube uses. You're absolutely correct. The videos are always going to look better on Floatplane. And on top of that, I was talking to Luke, one of the team members over there, who we were going back and forth with different ways to tweak it even more in the future. Now, the even more is like a 1% difference, but nerds like me, and probably many of you would notice, mean that with respect and admiration, of course. But yeah, absolutely. And it's to be honest, it's one of those things where YouTube's compression is so harsh and so bad that if my 4K videos are under 9 minutes and my 1080p are under 15, not for the weeklies usually, but for the higher production ones, I'll upload them uncompressed. Because on YouTube, you could upload up to 120 gigs uncompressed, and that way YouTube's only compressing it once. Whereas every other way, you're compressing it on Handbrake first, and then, well, the way I do it, on Handbrake first, and then YouTube compresses it then a second time very harshly. Technically, that's what Floatplane's doing, but their compression algorithm's much different and much more forgiving. So if I upload a previously compressed video, it's not going to murder it. It's going to just fit it into their specifications. So yeah, you guys absolutely nailed it. Hopefully they'll be able to tweak it even more so creators can just say, okay, well, this is exactly what Floatplane uses, so this is how I'm going to export it directly from whatever video editing software I have, and that way when it uploads, there's no processing. It's already in the format that Floatplane wants. Now, that's speculation, and it would be in the future. That's just kind of a cool idea we were talking about, but for now, and for at least the short-term future, the way they compress it is still better than YouTube. So I will upload all of my I think all of my videos on Floatplane, to be honest with you, even if it for whatever reason has to be released at the same time publicly as on Floatplane, but I will do them all, put them all there for this exact reason, so that way you can have a higher quality video. I haven't been spending as much time with library as I could. I'm kind of ashamed of that. I really want to back that a little bit more than I have been, but that's the same thing, whereas any video uploaded to library is exactly the way I send it, and I won't ever do anything like upload it there uncompressed so you're watching a 120 gig video. I do compress it first, but that way it's only compressed once. But at the moment, library is currently set, I went back and forth with this, but it's currently set to auto pull from YouTube. But there's going to be a bunch of changes coming to the way the whole Retro RGB team and network does things in the next few months. And one of the things that I will eventually move over to is taking great care in that each upload service gets their own video to make sure that they're all as best as they can on each. And the two that are really going to stand out are Floatplane #1, and then #2 is library. It's just, library is sometimes a little bit more challenging to use for some people. So Hopefully Floatplane is about as easy as it gets. Sign up, click a button, watch a video. So anyway, thanks for noticing. I didn't want to say anything because I didn't want to like plant the seed in the back of people's heads, but the fact that both of you noticed means that it really is as good of a difference as I hoped it would be. Now over to Patreon, and I guess I'll do these in order of newest, just because why not? Conrad Klaus said, since I'm now on a lot of support programs, does one give you a better cut than others? I'm not married to Patreon and would be willing to switch if you get a higher percentage. First of all, thank you so much. A few of you have reached out to me and asked that question, and I just thought that was such an amazingly thoughtful thing to ask. Thank you. I really appreciate that. The honest truth is I have no clue. I don't know if I have any backers on Bitbacker. I think there's one, and that's a little strange because that uses crypto, so that's constantly changing. I use Subscribestar, which is the most like finicky and weird way to transfer money and get paid. It's a little strange. It almost feels a little shady. So I don't know what that's all about. I think that has to do with some politics related things that have nothing to do with 99% of the creators that are on Subscribestar, just the 1% that make the loudest noise. And as far as Patreon versus Floatplane goes, I really won't know until for like a month or two, because there's always extra stuff somewhere. And I'm not trying to like accuse anybody of anything. It's just Patreon was always pretty straightforward on the cut that they take, but it always seems to end up being different by the time it hits the bank account. So I guess I'll figure that out and let everybody know, but I have no clue as of now. And honestly, though, that's such an awesome thing for people to ask. It's really nice of you. Thank you so much. Pablo Romero has an excellent question, and I'm going to try not to rant too long about it, but it's something I'm obviously very passionate about, the triple bypass. So I'll try to make this straightforward and ask again if there's any other details needed. But Pablo asked my opinion on installing the new Genesis triple bypass version 2 on a Model 1 Genesis. He mainly just wants to get rid of the jail bars, but the site says lifting the subcarrier pin is a good enough solution. Good enough, but not the best. Anyway, let me continue. So I don't know if the triple bypass would be something I'd notice. I'm planning on doing a recap on my Genesis, and I want to take care of the video noise as well. So there's a second part of your question, which I'll get back to, but to answer these questions, what I mean by all of these things is I always try to give solutions for everybody. So your average Genesis user, if you don't ever want to do any mods, excuse me, whatsoever, if you just want to buy a Genesis and use it, it's Genesis 1s have the best audio. Generally, there's one rare rev that doesn't, but they generally have the best audio and some pretty noisy video. Genesis 2 and 3s have some pretty good videos most of the time, the 3s especially, but there's always audio issues. I actually think the Genesis 3 audio is very good. It's just mono only, which sucks if you're listening on anything other than just a speaker built into your TV, then it's, you would want the stereo from it. So the next step from that, if you have a Genesis 1, lifting the subcarrier, which you got to be very careful because you could break the pin, you could rip the pad up. If you just know how to, hold your soldering iron on it, use some flux, and use like a pick or a razor blade to lift the pin very carefully. It's not too bad, but doing that disables composite video, disables the interference that's run alongside of the signals on the motherboard, and is a very big jump in quality in most cases. So somebody that wants to do a mod or, can't mod themselves, that should be a very cheap mod for a professional to do. Disassembling and reassembling the Genesis will take far longer than just lifting that pin. So that should be a cheap and easy one for people that just want to clean up the video and still have the stock audio. But you seem to be taking the type of steps that I personally would take. If you're already talking about recapping it, now you're probably ready to do a more complicated mod, and the triple bypass is by far my choice. It is absolutely better in every way than stock. It's the audio levels are identical, and the quality is either identical or better. That's depending on who you talk to. However, there's less of a noise floor, which means less buzz or hum, especially when there's all white screens. And also, you're replacing for at least 5 or 6 caps on the motherboard, and running those lines directly to the triple bypass board. So while I would still definitely recommend doing the cap replacement, you'll actually be leaving a few of those out. So for longevity, there's less electrolytic leaky caps to worry about in the future. As for the video, though, excuse me, there's other stuff you have to do if you want to do the bypass. And we haven't exactly figured out why yet, but we figured out the what. And that's the putting the tiny SMD cap underneath the lifted RGB pins on the VDP. It's also, there were talks of adding the same style capacitors to underneath the 7805 in order to filter that a little bit more. Jose was talking about that a little bit, and we did that on a few, and on one it made a ridiculous difference, and on the rest it just made kind of a difference. So there's more work to be done by doing a full video bypass on a Model 1 versus the subcarrier. But if you take the time to get it right, now you have the benefit of all of the video levels being equal to each other at the proper voltage. And what that means in real world terms is all of the colors are going to look a lot more accurate and better. So basically, almost as good as emulation with only a minimal amount of noise in the signal. Please remember that all analog signals will have some noise in it. So eventually when we get 8K scalers, you'll start to notice a much bigger difference from like a perfectly modded Genesis versus the Mister through HDMI. But overall, it's still something that you should be very pleased with, especially compared to the original. So that's kind of the overview on it. If you don't want to have to deal with the extra video modding, I understand, but you seem like somebody that doesn't mind doing a little bit extra work to get some good performance. So I would really look into it and try to get those extras. As far as where to get the info on this, I know I keep saying it, but the wiki is coming along step by step, and we're at the point now where I'm getting logins for the entire triple bypass team to start adding all of the info that they have. And that's when I'll be asking all of your help as well, because you'll find a lot of devs will be able to put things up there in dev speak with some pictures, so other devs will get it right away, but that's where people who are decent writers and with a little bit of technical knowledge might be able to come in and clean it up in a way where it's written for everyone to understand. So I really hope the wiki does take off. I'll be promoting the hell out of it once it's open past just the initial beta testers. And the second question you had was, there's a lot of information on the Q&A, but it tends to get lost after a few days. Have you considered using tags or some other tool that enables searches on this video? It's kind of tricky for me because then I do all of these in real time. Like, I don't read the questions before I do the Q&As. I feel like that's the most honest and natural answer to all of these. But so then I would have to go back, rewatch the whole video, and then write timestamps and tags for everything that I talk about. And I just don't have the time for it at the moment. If it's something more people want me to work on, I absolutely can. I'll just try to rearrange things and make it happen. But for the short term, meaning for at least the next few weeks, I'm still not going to have time to do it. But if enough people want, I'll definitely go back and try to look into that and see, and maybe just mention things we talk about. So like whatever the timestamp would be, as soon as I started your question, I would just say like triple bypass thoughts or something like that. But I'll try to get back to that as soon as I can. Jeremiah Jackson is having trouble with the Otaku Store Game Gear TV outboard, and it seems that red, green, and blue are just slightly out of sync with one another. Is there a way to sort this buffer with a capacitor or anything like that? So unfortunately, I don't have the answer. I've never used the Otaku Store Game Gear mod. I've only used Tim Worthington's, which were about as straightforward as you can get. I wouldn't call it easy because you do have to deal with the Game Gear, but the only thing in Tim's mod that was weird is one of the clock signal wires should really be shielded and made sure to be as short as possible, grounded, and moved away from the other video lines. And that did cause some issues if it wasn't that way. But other than that, it was pretty easy. So I honestly wouldn't know where to start diagnosing what you have unless I had it in front of me. I guess I would email them. I've had mixed feelings about the Otaku Store over the years. Sometimes it takes a month to get an email. The last time I messaged them was years ago, so maybe this is irrelevant now, but it took a long time to get responses, and the responses were very often like, I don't know, did you try this? Like, not helpful at all. And I'm not talking about deep technical stuff. I mean, like, kind of more on the basic end of things. So I don't know. Hopefully they got better, and hopefully they could answer your question about that. Or maybe even they've just had other people with the same issue that they could put you in touch with. But unfortunately, I have nothing, I got nothing to add. I'm sorry about that. Tofu Man. Sorry, Bob, I hate to re-ask questions that have been asked before, but re-watching every Q&A episode doesn't seem like a good idea. No problem whatsoever, and also don't forget, things change all the time. And I sort of see the second part of your question, so I think that statement applies to this too. So anybody, feel free to re-ask, unless it's something super basic, like, does this NES Mini have RGB? Pretty sure I covered that on the website, but your question is a good one, and it is changing. So the actual question is, I seem to remember you mentioning a Euro alternative to the Power Plus power supplies. I know we can just use an outlet adapter since they're 100 to 240 volts, but for a cleaner look, a standard Euro plug would be better. Am I remembering correctly? And if so, do you remember the brand of the trustworthy alternative? So, things are changing in the power supply world. At the moment, the Power Plus power supplies are on their second revision because of some new laws about components and stuff like that, and they're noisier than they were. Now, luckily for me, the ones that I've been testing that doesn't seem to translate to real world effects, but I don't know if I would recommend them any longer as a result, just to be safe. However, the ones that are currently still great are the triads. And you can get the international version of those. And just go to firebrandx.com, and he links to his Shmups post that has all of the information on it. Hopefully one day that type of info would be on the wiki as well, but that is what you're going to want for today. But it's, excuse me, at some point, Triad's going to probably switch their design around, I would assume by the end of this year, and I don't know if they will continue to be as good as they are. But to answer your question, right now, January 23rd, yeah, go to any of the. I think DigiKey has a UK or a Europe distributor. They definitely would have it, but if not, just check out the same model number that Firebrand X posts, and you should be able to find that worldwide. And they are great. And in fact, I have a friend that lives in Thailand. I just had Jose triple bypass mod a Genesis and refurbish a Sega CD for him. And after all of that, I sent 2 international versions of the Triads to test, and they apparently are working awesome. So this is confirmed pretty much worldwide now. So Two great questions there. Yes, feel free to re-ask anything that's not super basic. And the power supplies are constantly changing. So as of right now, today, Triads are still good. Hopefully the next rev will be equally high quality, but I'll keep everybody updated. Rick has a good question, and I'm going to answer it in 2 parts, but please pay attention to the second one because that's the safety warning part too. The question is, can you give the most basic overview of sync? I've seen tons of videos and never seem to understand what to use for which consoles and why. I get great output from all my consoles with the SCART cables I have, so I guess I'm mostly just wondering, can the wrong sync for these cables ruin anything? So first, the overview, and this is something that deserves its own video, but I'll do the short version now because you asked. Sync is very literally the synchronization of where everything on the screen goes. I can get into technical details as to why, but that's the end. So semantics aside, sync tells whatever device that you have where to put everything as it's being drawn via either a CRT, flat screen, whatever else. Now, the different types of sync that come from these different consoles are all rooted in the same. Sync is always the same thing when it starts, when it's first generated from a video chip, but some consoles give you the option to have that direct sync signal. Others don't, and that's why you hear things like C-Sync, which is just, basic sync. You could do sync on composite or sync on Luma. So the reason you have those choices, for example, like on a PlayStation, there is no C-Sync pin on the multi-out. And the reason people say avoid some and not others is because if you use composite video as sync, most devices in the retro gaming world can do that, because what you're doing is you're taking all of the video information. So composite video is every bit of it video info, including sync, and then that target device just uses the sync out of that and ignores everything else. But because there's everything else there, that could add weird interference and cause things like jail bars and diagonal checkerboard patterns and stuff like that. Luma is the brightness information and sync all together, and the brightness information isn't going to cause issues. So most people for PlayStations use Luma as sync, but some devices, not many, but some, don't know what that is and don't understand that you need to only take the sync information and ignore the rest. So that's why there's always issues if you're connecting PlayStations to like an Extron Crosspoint switch. And then the final part, and I hope this isn't getting too confusing, but basic C-Sync is outputted at a specific voltage on most consoles, and it's supposed to be changed into the correct voltage for TV signals for things that we do. So here's the problem with that, and here comes the safety warning. For consoles like the Genesis, many of them require this, but I'll use the Genesis as an example. Sega didn't include any RGB components at all on the motherboard to save money, because if it cost $1 a console and they sell millions of consoles and only a small percentage use RGB, that's money wasted. So I understand that. So instead of having those components on the motherboard, they put them in the cable. And part of what those components do is change the voltage of both the video lines, RGB, and sync to the correct voltage that TVs, processors, and everything else should be expecting. And that's where you hear things like C-Sync, TTL sync. TTL is usually a reference to the higher voltage levels that shouldn't be used with most consoles. So the direct answer to your question, first and foremost, if everything's working just fine, you don't have to worry about the quality issues. So there you go. However, if your SCART cables are more than 2 years old and you're using anything other than a RGB monitor, it might be worth it one day to just even to familiarize yourself, pop open the SCART heads and kind of take a look at the components. And if you have a multimeter, you can test, like, stick one on the console end and stick one on the SCART pin and measure for resistance. And you could follow the C-Sync page on Retro RGB to reference what each should be. And that's just a guarantee that the sync line and even the RGB components have the right ones. Generally speaking, all of the major manufacturers did this right for a while, but there's been some mistakes over the years, and I believe everything's corrected as of now. So, but I mean, I would double check because I'm weird and I would be curious anyway for the nerd part of things. But if you have a setup that's already running and it's been running for years, it's probably all fine anyway because the damage would have already been done. So yeah, I hope that's a decent overview. If you have any suggestions on better ways I could explain it, I really do want to make more beginner videos on all of this stuff. Maybe one really big fancy video that kind of based on the panel I did last year. That is coming at some point. It would have been out already if I didn't get sick. And then maybe small things to break down each. I think Displaced Gamers might be a better source to break down all of the individuals because the way they do things is phenomenal. But I'll tackle the main overview and then hopefully work with them to promote their videos on the follow-ups and stuff. But great question, and hopefully I got the answers that you needed. Newts wants to know my take on repro carts for SNES or maybe just in general. So that's a pretty easy answer from me. If you just want to play a game, then ROM carts are usually the easiest way to go. However, if you're a collector and somebody that really appreciates things like a box art, a physical copy, or if you're somebody that the nostalgic plugging in a cartridge and seeing the label on the game as you're playing is very important to you, then repro carts are awesome. Now, there is the unfortunate reality that many, not all, many repro carts are built terribly. The wrong components, the wrong plating for the actual metal fingers that plug in, no bezel on it, which means you're going to essentially be smashing the pins in your console every time you put it in. So I do know a few collectors that just love that they have those, and it's important to them, but they don't play the game with the repro cart. They play it on a ROM cart. Excuse me. So essentially they collect the repro, but play the ROM on a ROM cart. So for you, I would just think of what's important to you and go down that route. Hopefully more indie devs are going to be doing things like, here's the full copy of the game with a box art for $65. And if you just want the ROM, here it is. And here's a donate button if you want to throw us 10 or $20 or something. I really love that idea because I genuinely want to support developers and games that I like. And my personal take on this is, in that scenario, I would download the game for free, play it, and if I liked it, definitely throw them $20. And if I didn't, treat it like a demo and delete the game and not take it from them or something. So that's my personal opinion on all that stuff. I don't think there's a right answer. I think it's just really whatever's the most important to you. But I'm definitely a fan of ROM carts. And if you just go to retrorgb.com/ROM carts, you can see pretty much all of the ones that are mainstream and currently available today. For the SNES specifically, if you don't need any special chip support, just get the Super EverDrive. If you want everything, MSU1 audio, special chip support, new cool stuff that may be coming in the future, the FX Pack Pro is much more expensive, but that's the one that does everything. So once again, there's no wrong answer or there's no right answer, I guess, for this. It really is just what's most important to you. And I guess the only wrong answer is if you have a repro that's built really badly, don't put that in your console. Diego asked, since hundreds of games and consoles are upconverted to 960p 60 through the OSSC, but many of the HDMI consoles work at only 720p or 1080p, is there any good capture card for these resolutions? Well, if you have a PC, the data path vision is amazing. It does everything that you would want except audio. The only two downsides are if you're doing direct RGB, which in this case you're not, you're doing OSSC, but just to put it out there, if you're doing direct RGB, the interface is very weird. Follow my long, but I think I nailed the video capture video on how to use the data path. It's just a long video. But direct HDMI, or it's actually DVI, but you don't need to convert it. It's just a cable. So you would just get an HDMI to DVI cable, and that should handle everything perfect. I took DC HDMI 960 captures in that, and I'm pretty sure I did Dreamcast through SCART 480p through the OSSC, basically exactly what you're doing to get 960p, and that worked fine as well. As far as external capture cards, I'm still working on that. I've talked to a few people after the last capture card shootout was just posted that have a lot of pretty amazing info out there. And that's all going to be implemented onto the wiki, a website. There's probably a few places that are going to be publishing that info soon enough. So hopefully we'll have USB-based solutions. I'm very excited about some of the new ones from Magewell, and AverMedia too as well, that claim that no drivers are needed. You plug it in, it shows up as a webcam, and then I think if you want to, you could download software to tweak it, but essentially it just posts whatever it's given. I love that. That's going to be, because that'll work on any operating system, on any computer that has a USB 3 port, or I think some are 3.1 now, but that's what I'm hoping for. I just want to do more testing, and I would love to nail down two cards. One USB base that can do direct RGB capture, which I'm hoping the Magewell one I have right here can do it. I just need to figure out how to tweak it. And another group of ones that are HDMI in that can do everything that like super hardcore retro gamers would want, such as 960p 60 with full color space. So I'm pretty sure that they're out there. I just haven't tested exactly. But the short-term solution, if you need it, data path vision. The E1 or E1S will both be fine. Ethan Freer was talking about hardware deblur for the Nintendo 64, and I think I know the answer to this. I might be wrong, so anybody please correct me. And also, did I get your name right? But there's two types of deblur that you could do for the Nintendo 64. The first is software-based that can be done through Game Shark codes, game patches, or if you're using a ROM cart, it could auto-load the Game Shark codes as you boot the game. But it's essentially a way of saying disable anti-aliasing. And the hardware deblur, I believe, is a way of tapping that signal before it's changed on the hardware chips to come out. So the Bordy's N64 Advanced mod, I believe Tim Worthington's with the newer firmware, and of course the Ultra HDMI all have the ability to do that. So Ethan's question was, is it possible for some kind of external scaler or a dedicated device to have the deblur for the older RGB modded consoles or will that work at all? I don't think so. And I think the first part of your question might be kind of wrong, because you said considering the deblur is just some kind of image processing. I don't think that's the way it works. I think it's processing the image before it's finished being generated inside the N64, or manipulating the chips to change that image differently, to output the image differently. So no, I don't think there's going to be an external way to do that. I could be wrong. I'm not an expert on the N64. Bordy might be able to answer that question better up on Twitter or something. But as far as I know now, unless I'm somehow remembering this wrong, the hardware deblur is manipulating the chips on the N64. So even if I didn't get the semantics right, I'm pretty sure that basic detail is the truth. And that's why you can't have something like the OSSC programmed to deblur it, because it has to be internally on the N64. So correct me if I'm wrong, but I think that's the one. Cam had some great questions about the TimeSleuth, so I'm just going to answer them one at a time right as you're asking them. Is the TimeSleuth still the best lag tester out there? Hell yeah. Are there any drawbacks to buying one now, given that 4K TVs are everywhere and 8K is on the horizon? No, not at all. Because no matter what, once other scalers come out, you'll be able to put that TimeSleuth into that scaler. And even if the scaler adds a few milliseconds of lag, you should be able to determine that as well. And I'm sure all of the people who test on it, and even the creators, Dan and Christoph, would post info on that. And lastly, should I just get one when they're eventually back in stock, or just hold off for a future update? My personal opinion, grab one right as soon as they get back in stock. It's an amazing device. I quite literally keep it right next to me. I didn't put that there for this question. I didn't read the question until I hit record. I have it within arm's length of me at all times when I'm testing, because I use it constantly. It supports all the resolutions that I personally would use, including PC resolutions that might be important to other people. The reason for don't hold off is because in order to generate 4K or 8K HDMI signals, it will require stuff that is way too expensive to put in something like the TimeSleuth, and probably will be for the years to come. So it is way more likely that we'll see a scaler that simply does 720p to 4K or 1080p to 4K and nothing else, which you could then, of course, use with the TimeSleuth through that scaler into a TV. But also, the other thing that I found is with all of the 4K TVs I've tested, the difference between 1080p and 720p is almost always nothing. 480p, I've seen a Sony TV that adds like an extra half a frame of lag to 480p, but it was only one TV, so the different resolutions don't generally make that big of a difference. You're right, though, testing in native 4K would be awesome, but it's just not going to happen on a mini device like that for quite some time to come. You're going to need double it. I believe Dan tested, there's something out there from, I forgot the name of it, but there's the iScan 4K or something. There's like a little dongle that just does the scaling from 1080p to 4K. I can't remember if that was tested or not, if you want to test native resolutions of panels. But I think that we're getting a pretty good reading as is. So I probably went a little too long on that answer. Short version, buy it right now. There's not going to be anything better that I know of in the foreseeable future, but there might be some scalers that you could combine it with that will get you all the features that you want. This last one isn't really a question. It's more like a clarification and a thank you, but worth mentioning, at least in my opinion. Gord Captain said that when they went to my Amazon shop link, the link was broken, but other people reported it being fine, and it always seemed to work for me on different browsers. So I think that must have just been either a blip with your browser, a blip with your service provider, or just Amazon itself. But thank you for mentioning that, and thank you to everybody over the years that have pointed out a lot of stuff about the website. Even just recently, I think Dirk Swizzler pointed out an issue with Floatplane that I didn't know existed because I can't see the same view that other people see. Not a dig on anything. It's just I really appreciate when people point stuff like that out. Even little semantics, like when I get punctuation and stuff wrong. I don't always have time to fix the little stuff, like I put 2 periods instead of 1 or something like that. I wish I did, but I do always appreciate when people give the heads up, even if it turns out to just be a blip that wasn't actually a thing, because I've caught so many weird stuff over the years that I would have never known about if it wasn't for people bringing it to my attention. So Gourd Captain, Dirk Swizzler, thank you very much for pointing that stuff out. But I don't think there's ever an issue with the Amazon shop link. And another word about that, luckily the trolls haven't hit me hard for that one, but I really just think I really like the idea of the Amazon shop link, because so often people just say, hey, I saw that thing in your video, what do you use for that? And I don't have time to review it. It's probably not a fit for Retro RGB to review it, but it's a product that I use and I like a lot. So it's kind of like, here you go. Just click on this and check out all the stuff that I use. And if it's up here, that means I currently use and appreciate it, And yes, there's an affiliate link. So, if you want to get me a couple pennies on every sale, then click through that. Or if you don't, if you hate the fact that I get a cut of it, just, copy and paste it into a different browser without the affiliate link and buy it for without an affiliate link. That's cool too. I just really like that whole Amazon shop thing, so that I really just get to share with people the equipment that I use, the stuff that I feel works great. And it's kind of like, I take everything seriously like that. I would never just put something up there to put something up there, but it's also a little bit easier for me because I don't have to go and review everything that's on there, because some stuff doesn't really require a review, like a power adapter that has everything spaced out nicely so you could put the big wall warts. I mean, that's more for, I don't know, that's not a fit for Retro RGB's channel. So that's a fit for a different type of channel, I guess. But thanks for checking it out. I appreciate it. And hopefully other people could discover new products and stuff through that. And hopefully it's more of a help than a hindrance, I guess I'm trying to say. Well, that's it for this week. I just want to let everybody know that I had to record this earlier on Thursday because of scheduling stuff. So if I missed any of your questions, please re-ask them. I've never intentionally skipped a question, but unfortunately I've mistakenly skipped a bunch. Usually it's because I record the answer and accidentally delete the file of the recording while I'm mixing it in Premiere. Stupid move, I know, but it happens. And, there's a bunch of other weird technical glitches that I've ended up missing questions before. So no matter what, if I miss yours and it's important, please re-ask it, or just message me directly through the support platforms, because I certainly don't want to leave anybody hanging for something that's really important to them. And once again, please ask any question that you would like wherever you found the video. So Floatplane, YouTube subscribe service, Patreon, whatever. Just any question you have, find the latest Q&A and ask the question there. The way these services work, it's kind of impossible to go back and sort comments in order and find out which came in at which date and know which ones I missed. So I think it's just easier for everybody to have it all, any current question in the latest Q&A. Sorry if that's a pain, but I think it's the easiest overall. And of course, and as always, thank you all so much for supporting, because without your support, all the behind-the-scenes research, the weekly podcasts, and a lot of the crazy, awesome stuff I'm involved in wouldn't get to happen. So thank you all so much, and I'll see you next week.